In the last episode of our series, we stood with the Apostle John in the throne room of heaven. We saw the Lamb who was slain take the sealed scroll out of the right hand of the one seated on the throne. We heard the new song. We watched myriads of angels and every creature in creation join in worship. The Lamb is worthy. The Lamb has the scroll. The Lamb is about to begin opening the 7 seals. And the moment those seals begin to open, friends, the long-frozen story of history starts to move again. Today, in this 3rd episode of our series, Revelation Explained, we walk slowly through Revelation chapter 6 into the opening verse of chapter 8, and we will witness the breaking of all 7 seals on the scroll. 4 horsemen will ride. The souls of martyrs will cry out from under an altar. The sky itself will be rolled back like a scroll. The kings of the earth will hide in the caves. And then, when the 7th and final seal is broken, heaven will fall silent for half an hour. The 7 seals are one of the most discussed sections of the entire Bible and one of the most misunderstood. People have used these chapters to predict the end of the world dozens of times in the last 2,000 years. And they have been wrong dozens of times. So we are not going to do that. We are going to do something much more useful. We are going to read what the Bible actually says, slowly, on its own terms, and ask what the 7 seals tell us about the unfolding plan of God in history, the suffering of the saints, and the day when the Lamb will set everything right. Let us begin with Revelation chapter 6, verse 1. Then I saw the Lamb open one of the 7 seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures say with a voice like thunder, "Come." Stop right there. The Lamb opens the seal. Notice who is doing the opening. It is not the dragon. It is not the Antichrist. It is not human history running out of control. The Lamb is the one breaking each seal. Every event of these chapters, including the terrifying ones, flows from the sovereign hand of the Lamb who was slain. Friends, this is one of the most important truths in the entire book of Revelation. The judgments of God are not the loss of God's control. They are the exercise of God's control. The Lamb who has the scars of his own death in his hands is also the King who is ordering the events of the last days. He is in charge. The 4 living creatures who cried, "Holy, holy, holy," in the throne room are now calling each rider out of the scroll one by one. "Come," says the first creature, and out of the scroll rides the first horseman. And I looked, and behold, a white horse, and its rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he came out conquering, and to conquer. Now here is where Bible-believing Christians have honestly disagreed for centuries. Who is the rider on the white horse? There are 2 main interpretations, and serious godly men have held to both. The first interpretation says that the rider on the white horse is Jesus Christ himself. Why? Because in Revelation chapter 19, when Jesus returns from heaven, he is described as riding on a white horse with a sword and crowns and conquering authority. Some Bible students see that as the same rider, a victorious Christ going out to conquer the nations with the gospel as the seals begin. The second interpretation says that the rider is not Christ, but a deceiver, an antichrist figure, a counterfeit Christ riding out to imitate the true conqueror. Why? Because the rider in chapter 6 carries only a bow with no arrows mentioned, while the true Christ in chapter 19 carries a sword. Because the rider in chapter 6 is given a crown by some other authority, while the true Christ wears many crowns of his own. Because the white horse here begins the sequence of judgment that includes war, famine, and death, which would be strange company for the Savior of the world. I will tell you which way I read it. I lean toward the second interpretation. I think the rider on the white horse is a spirit of conquest, the spirit of every false Messiah and every Antichrist figure that has ridden through history, promising salvation and bringing only war. The pattern of the seals, conquest leading to war, leading to famine, leading to death, is the pattern of a fallen world unleashed by human pride. But friends, godly Bible teachers disagree on this one. What we agree on is this: the seals are showing us the world as it really is when human ambition is allowed to run. The second creature speaks. Come. And another horse came out, a bright red one. Its rider was permitted to take peace from the earth, so that people should slay one another, and he was given a great sword. The red horseman is war. Bright red is the color of blood. The sword he carries is the great sword, a phrase that in Greek emphasizes the savage scale of slaughter. He does not start small wars between villages. He brings warfare on a planetary scale, the kind that takes peace away from the entire earth at once. Friends, 2,000 years ago when John wrote these words, no human being could have imagined warfare on a global scale. Wars were local. They were limited. They moved at the speed of horse and foot. But in the last 100 years, our generation has seen world wars that killed 70 and 80 million people across every continent of the earth. We have seen nuclear weapons developed that can destroy entire civilizations in minutes. The Red Horseman has been riding harder in our generation than in any previous generation in human history. And his ride is not yet finished. The Lamb opens the seal. The Red Horseman is permitted to ride. The peace of the earth is taken away, and human beings slay one another on a scale the world has never seen. The third creature speaks. Come. And I looked, and behold, a black horse, and its rider had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard what seemed to be a voice in the midst of the four living creatures, saying, a quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and wine. The black horseman is famine. The scales in his hand are not the scales of justice. They are merchant scales for measuring out small portions of food. A denarius was the daily wage of a working man in the 1st century. A quart of wheat was the daily bread for one person. So 1 full day of labor in this future famine will buy only 1 day of bread for one person, and no bread for his wife or his children. 3 quarts of barley, a cheaper grain, will feed a small family for a day at the same price. The phrase, do not harm the oil, and the wine is striking. Oil and wine were the products of the wealthy estates, the luxury items that the rich relied on. In the worst famines of history, it is the rich who buy what little food remains. The poor starve while luxury still flows. The Black Horseman is the brutal economic inequality that comes when civilizations collapse. The bread is gone, but the luxury wine keeps flowing. Friends, every age has seen its famines, but the prophet John is describing something on a planetary scale. The Lamb opens the seal. The Black Horseman rides. The 4th creature speaks. Come. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and its rider's name was Death, and Hades followed him, and they were given authority over 1/4 of the earth, to kill with sword, and with famine, and with pestilence, and by wild beasts of the earth. The pale horse. The Greek word here is chloros, which is where we get the English word chlorine. It is a sickly yellow-green color, the color of corpses. The rider is named Death, and Hades, the realm of the dead, follows him to receive the souls he claims. Notice the scale. 1/4 of the earth, 25%. In our world today, with 8 billion people on the planet, that would be 2 billion souls. Notice the 4 means of death: sword, famine, pestilence, wild beasts. The first 3 are obvious. The mention of wild beasts is striking. In the breakdown of human civilization, the natural order of creation collapses too. The animal kingdom turns against humanity. This is not a small judgment. This is one of the largest single losses of human life ever described in Scripture. And friends, when you put the four horsemen together, you see the pattern. False conquest leads to war. War leads to famine. Famine leads to death. This is what happens when a fallen world is left to itself. The four horsemen are not God lashing out in arbitrary anger. They are God removing his restraining hand and allowing humanity to taste the full bitter fruit of its own rebellion. The judgment is the gift withdrawn. The fifth seal does something different. It does not bring another horseman. When he opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slain for the word of God and for the witness they had borne. They cried out with a loud voice, "O sovereign Lord, holy and true, how long before you will judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth?" Then they were each given a white robe and told to rest a little longer, until the number of their fellow servants and their brothers should be complete, who were to be killed as they themselves had been. Friends, this is one of the most precious and one of the most sobering passages in all of Revelation. John sees the souls of the martyrs. Where are they? Under the altar. In the Old Testament temple, the blood of every sacrifice was poured out at the base of the altar. The blood ran down into the ground beneath. So when John sees the souls of the martyrs under the altar, he is telling us that these believers are part of the great sacrifice to God, their lives poured out as a drink offering, just as the Apostle Paul described his own death in 2 Timothy. They are not lost. They are not forgotten. They are with the Lord. But notice what they cry. How long, O Lord? How long before you avenge our blood? The martyrs in heaven are crying out for justice. They are not bitter. They are not vengeful. But they are pleading for the day when their suffering will be vindicated. And what is the answer? Rest a little longer. The number of martyrs is not yet complete. The persecution has not yet reached its full measure. There are still more believers, our brothers and sisters in this very generation, who will pay the ultimate price for their faith. They are given white robes, the robes of victory, and told to wait. The Lord knows the exact number. The Lord will avenge in his exact time. Not one drop of martyr blood will be forgotten. When he opened the sixth seal, I looked, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth. The full moon became like blood, and the stars of the sky fell to the earth, as the fig tree sheds its winter fruit when shaken by a gale. The sky vanished like a scroll that is being rolled up, and every mountain and island was removed from its place. The sixth seal is cosmic. Up to this point, the four horsemen and the souls of the martyrs have all been on earth, but now the heavens themselves shake. Earthquake. The sun blackened. The moon turned blood red. Stars falling. The sky rolled up like a scroll. Mountains moved. Islands moved. Friends, this kind of cosmic upheaval language appears throughout Old Testament prophecy whenever a great judgment of God is being described. It is a description in apocalyptic poetry of the day of the Lord, the day when God himself breaks into history to set everything right. And notice what the response is on earth. Then the kings of the earth, and the great ones, and the generals, and the rich, and the powerful, and everyone, slave and free, hid themselves in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains, calling to the mountains and rocks, "Fall on us, and hide us from the face of him who is seated on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of their wrath has come, and who can stand?" Catch that phrase. The wrath of the Lamb. The Lamb, the same gentle Lamb who was slain, the same gentle Lamb who took the scroll in chapter 5. That Lamb has wrath, not the wrath of a man losing his temper. The wrath of a holy God who can no longer tolerate evil in his universe. The most powerful people on earth, the kings and the generals and the billionaires, will not have refuge in their wealth or their armies on that day. They will beg the rocks of the mountains to fall on them rather than face the face of the Lamb. Before the seventh and final seal is broken, John pauses to show us something. Revelation chapter 7 is a deliberate interlude between the sixth and the seventh seal. We will deal with chapter 7 in detail in our next episode, because that is where the famous 144,000 are sealed, and that is where the great multitude before the throne is described. For now, I will only say this. Before the storm gets worse, before the seventh seal opens, John sees the people of God being marked and protected. He sees a great multitude that no one could number, from every nation and tribe and people and tongue, standing before the throne wearing white robes, crying out, "Salvation belongs to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb." So even in the middle of the darkest hours of the seals, the people of God are not abandoned. They are sealed. They are gathered. They are worshiping before the throne. The story of judgment is not the only story being told in the book of Revelation. The story of salvation is being told at exactly the same time. As the four horsemen ride, the great multitude grows. As the martyrs cry out under the altar, more saints are gathered to them. As the kings of the earth flee to the caves, the redeemed sing before the throne. Two stories, side by side, unfolding through the same events. When he opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. Friends, let that sentence sit with you. Up to this point, the throne room of heaven has been filled with ceaseless worship. The four living creatures crying, "Holy, holy, holy," day and night without rest. The 24 elders falling down. The myriads of angels singing the new song. Every creature in heaven and on earth and under the earth lifting up worship to the Lamb. And then the seventh seal is opened, and heaven falls silent for half an hour. Why? Because the seventh seal does not bring another judgment of its own immediately. The seventh seal is the seal that releases the seven trumpets, which we will study in future episodes. The silence in heaven is the hush of anticipation before the next great chapter of God's judgment begins. It is also, I believe, the silence of holy reverence. The ceaseless worship that fills heaven goes quiet for one solemn half hour, in honor of what is about to be poured out, and in acknowledgement of how serious the next stage of judgment will be. There is a time for shouting praise. There's also a time for silence. The wisest worship sometimes has no words. Now let me step back and ask, what are the seven seals actually showing us? I want to give you 3 observations that will help you read these chapters and the rest of the book of Revelation rightly. First observation, the seals are not predicting one specific moment in human history. They are describing the pattern of human history. The white horsemen of false conquest, the red horsemen of war, the black horsemen of famine, the pale horsemen of death. These have ridden in every century since the cross of Christ. The martyrs have been crying out under the altar in every generation. The cosmic upheaval and the wrath of the Lamb will come at the end, but the pattern is happening now and has been happening all along. So when you read about wars and rumors of wars and famines and pestilences and earthquakes in your own headlines, do not say, "Well, I guess the end is now." Say, "The Lamb is opening the seals." The story has been moving all along. Second observation. The seals are showing us that nothing happens outside the will of God. Every single event in these chapters, even the most terrifying ones, is initiated by the Lamb opening a seal. He is not surprised by world history. He is the author of it. The 4 horsemen do not ride until he breaks the seal that releases them. And friends, that should be a deep comfort to you when the world looks like it is spinning out of control. It is not spinning out of his control. He is opening the seals at the time of his own choosing. Third observation. The seals are showing us the urgency of being on the right side of this story. The kings of the earth in chapter 6 end up hiding in caves and calling to mountains to fall on them. The great multitude in chapter 7 end up standing before the throne in white robes, singing salvation to our God. The same events fall on both groups. The difference is what you have done with the Lamb who is breaking the seals. Have you trusted him? Have you been washed in his blood? Have you become part of the multitude that no one can number? Or are you still trying to build your own kingdom apart from him? So here is the question I want to leave you with as we close this episode, my friend. When you watch the news this week, when you read about wars in distant lands, when you see economic stress and inflation and famines in poorer countries, when you hear about earthquakes and storms and the rising fear of so many people in our generation, what frame will you put around what you see? Will you let the news drive you to despair? Will you let it drive you to numbness? Or will you remember the Lamb who is opening the seals? Will you remember that he is in charge of every chapter of the unfolding story? Will you remember the martyrs under the altar who are about to be vindicated, the great multitude in white robes who are about to sing, and the silence in heaven that is about to be broken? In our next episode, we will turn to Revelation chapter 7, the interlude between the 6th and the 7th seal, and we will look in detail at the 144,000 sealed servants of God and the great multitude before the throne. Who are they? Are they literal numbers or symbolic? Are they Jewish believers, Gentile believers, or both? These are some of the most debated questions in all of Revelation study, and we are going to walk through them carefully. But before we get there, I want you to take time this week to read Revelation chapter 6 and chapter 8, verse 1 for yourself. Read them slowly. Picture each horseman as he is described in the text. Read the cry of the martyrs as if it were the cry of believers in our own generation, and then sit for a little while in the silence of the 7th seal. The Lamb is on the throne. He holds the scroll. He is breaking the seals, and the story is moving toward its appointed end.